Welcome back, everybody. CJ Kim here with my colleague, Matt Wilson. Today, we're going to do another episode of Digging for Dollars, and the topic today is make or break holes. So we're going to be going over some holes or potential holes that have been PR'd that on companies that we previously mentioned, and give an update on what our thoughts are and if the holes are a make or breaker for the company. So obviously, we're going to start off with a company that we've already covered a couple of times, but it's our company, it's your company, Sterling Metals, 262 meters of 1% copper equivalent. Can't get over that number, Matt. Can we agree? A maker?
Yeah, I think so. I hope so. No, this is definitely a maker. I think that, obviously I'm biased, no question. We are all biased. We've been supporting this thing. We're in this thing. But I think that you look at a lot of porphyry systems around the world, and the key is the rock itself. So, the amount of bornite dump that happened, and I encourage everyone to go onto the website. We put all the core up there. We have pictures of samples. We've tried really hard to make sure that the transparency of the rock is there. And so the only thing I'll say about that is that you don't get that kind of a bornite dump in nature unless some giant system is there to do it. So if this was like one little high-grade gold vein in Ontario, that's harder that way, right? But this is a big thing with a low-grade halo around it. So you get your bulk tonnage, giant mine life, plus this payback ore, this rich center to it. And I mean, you look at these bornite cores of the greatest things around the world, and there's some 200, 400 meters long to 2 kilometers. Like Oyotogo is like a 3 kilometer long giant part of bornite. And so when you see bornite dumps like this, they're very, very, very special, not to be underestimated. And I think, the ups and downs of the stocks are going to be what happens. But I know that people look at this, and that's the big feedback so far. So definitely a maker.
Okay, a quick question for you, because I've been getting a lot of inquiries about this. The other holes that we're waiting on are obviously not in the vicinity of this discovery hole. So to maybe not necessarily align expectations of what's on the docket, these other holes that are coming that you're going to be releasing, obviously, what are the expectations here? Is it to understand the geological model more, or are we expecting just as good hits as this? Well, I don't think you can say that much.
Yeah, no, sure, no problem. It's a really good question, because there are approaches that you can do when you make a discovery, right? So you can either, and I don't know which one's right. I think you can do either one. We are very confident with capital. This is not going to be something where you market a deal everywhere and drop the stock on everything. Like, this is a long-term thing now. And so what we did is, when we drilled this hole, which wasn't in our drill plan, we're like, one of the things that we need to do is understand the scale of the system, understand what's going on. And there's that 50 meters of 1% hit at the breccia a kilometer away. We'll talk about a nice little breccia, a great breccia hit next. And, does the breccia continue? Does it connect? How does the system work? And so we decided, we dragged the drill 2 kilometers to the west around this kind of resistivity horseshoe, which you'll see in our plan map. Drilled some weird targets, drilled some things that worked and some things that didn't. And I think that then we're coming back to this and understanding things now the way that we do, we can talk much better about it. And I can say that now we are reattacking the part of the system where we have this discovery hole, but we felt that it was a good idea to do it. And on top of that, we didn't have the pads prepped. And so for people who are unaware, like you can't just move a rig around in Ontario. It's not like the desert of Australia, for example, where you just drag a rig wherever you want to go. So in Ontario, there's lots of trees. You need to trail cut. You need to do a lot of things to move your rig to a place that is an appropriate spot to drill. So you can't just move the rig to the next spot and drill right away. And so we wanted to think about how we were going to attack it. And so we took the rig and we're like, all right, let's go around here. It's super cheap to drill, so let's get an idea of the system. So some are good, some are bad. And I think that, I have no assays and won't have them for a bit. So as labs are completely backed up. So that's really the way I can set expectations.
Yeah, and I think setting expectations is important, because let's go over a company that did everything right in terms of connecting with the market. This is Rakla, and they started off with very encouraging samples, good market updates to their stakeholders, and spoke about the core when they first initially pulled it out, and there was a lot of promising signs of mineralization. I believe they called it sheeting veins. And, the press release that they put out when they completed their drill programs, signified, they put it right in the title, a new gold discovery. So there was a lot of excitement a lot of amp up. The share price performed extraordinarily well during the whole drilling phase. And so there was a lot of high expectations that were built into this. And then, when they put out the first batch, it definitely disappointed. And we saw a haircut of over 70%. And so was Rakla's hole a make or break for the company?
I think that the first thing that we have to talk about in make or break, and it's the same thing we do with digging for dollars, right? So you always have to say, what's the market cap? And so I don't know actually Rakla that well. I don't know what the history was there. Did they have a bunch of drill holes before, or was this an initial?
This was, I believe, in a new area. In that,
so I think
they started off with pretty grassroots exploration.
And Quentin talked about this a lot, right? Like this is a big Crescat thing. They got a good. So they were a $140 million company, I think. So I think the difference, always when you're aligning expectations, you have to think of relative value, right? So it's like, what is it worth if it works? What is it worth if it doesn't? And attribute that risk to it, right? So I think that, we're so short term in our marketplace, right? Like we just jump in and out of things. And I think that I personally don't like visuals for that reason and announcements ahead of time. I think that it over promises and often under delivers because we just set these expectations for what is going to come that are impossible. Right? So like at Sterling, we drilled 10 meters of 20% equivalent, and probably people are going to be disappointed unless it's 10 meters of 30% equivalent now, right? So I think that, and I get that, it's no problem. So that's why it takes these time to build these things and long-term supportive shareholders. But when we grasp onto these things like Rakla and you make it 140 million on visuals, that's a hard thing. So they did a really good job. They were there, they owned it, they talked about it. I think they have assays. I think they have more results coming in the hopper, and these are often. Look at Hercules. Hercules is another good example, right? Like they came out with all these porphyry hits last year, drops down like 45, 50 cents. Now it's 80 cents, and it's all 90 million for Barrick gave them $30 million. So it's we just get a little bit too caught up in stock price and how everything should go up. And I think we always got to keep market cap in our heads.
So they are still waiting on assays, and these are from the holes that exhibited the highest density of veining. And so maybe they are able to rebound from the haircut, kind of like what IDEX did, right? There was a lot of promotion and hype over IDEX. The first batch did not necessarily impress the market. However, we saw a good rebound today, 100 meters of 1% copper.
Awesome hole.
Yeah.
And we own whack of it. I like, I was just chatting with the guys, and I think that, it's this breccia. I had, my theory was I like to get context in stories like this. So they have like this 35,000 hectares just beside it. This is a smaller land package, but all of it's connected to the Hercules discovery and Scout in that whole district, right? And that's a great hit. Breccia is a really important thing in porphyry development. I think that everyone got so high, it's like it's so early. These things are so early, right? Like Philo was 20 years. NGX was $30 million in 2009. It owned Lundin Mining, NGX, and Philo. It's now $25 billion of value. And so just hold on. Like, so if you have good mineralization over some breadth, like everyone gets so focused, like you can't do it overnight. That's why public markets for venture is very difficult, right? It's very hard because it takes time to prove your business model, and it takes misses and hits, and we have to disclose all these things all the time. And, I'm faced with this, I'm going through this right now. And the guys at IDEX are going through it. They saw this, giant drop off one hole. Like, why does that change the story?
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's a tough space that way, right? Because you can make a trade, and the trade, I would never knock a trade. You know what I mean? Like you're going to buy something at 30, sell it $1.50 in 2 weeks. Fantastic, right? And that's often what happens. But, long term, right? So it's hard. It's like it depends on what your focus is. I always think that a target price in your head is really important. You're like, okay, if this works, what's it worth, right?
Having a target price and not getting caught up on the hype and revising it upwards and upwards and upwards, right?
Yeah, which of course is very hard in discovery.
Well, I think speculators have almost the same mentality or the same mindset. Would you rather leave X amount, like 1,000 times amount on the table and lose it all, or you want to take your double and miss out on that 1,000 times? Like that what if scenario is something that a lot of people lose sleep over. But
totally, and I get it, right? Because everything's so risky in this space.
Yeah.
But that's why I do think that if something is so far overblown on its market cap, and I'm not saying any of the things were or are or not, but that is when you can take money off the table. It's not as easy to get back into stories as you think, because if you're trying to get back in on that trading mentality, then the whole world is probably doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're like, oh, I'll just buy it again when something happens, you're probably going to miss it because it's probably tripled by the time that you do that. Right. So like we have big positions, we're long term on things. I think that personally, I'm a horrible short term trader. So
yeah. Well, I think a lot of people also have a mandate or a way of trading where they'll sell into drilling news, because what you said, it's very, very hard to meet the expectation of what everyone else is thinking. So, there's a lot of hype while a company is drilling, and maybe use that opportunity to take some gains off the table and mitigate some of your risk.
Totally. Not a bad idea whatsoever. I always think that, it's a good idea, right? Like you can't fault people for making money. It's a great idea. I think that, I think I just caution everyone that like the movement of the stock does not change anything about the story. Mm-hmm. Like the stock and the story are two very different things. And yes, of course they're correlated, and of course there's lots of times that they do matter, but like, the asset isn't better because the stock went up, and the asset isn't worse because the stock goes down. People have been stressed on sterling because it went from $3 to $1.50, went from 30 cents to $3, right? Nothing changed. It's the same thing, right? So I think that let's chat about our favorite little company over in Morocco, Stellar Africa, right? These guys come out with 13 meters of 6 grams gold and then like 16 of 2 across this, below a trench of 150 of 3. Yeah. And they prove their geology. Prove the geology model that it continues. I don't know how big it's going to be, but who cares? It's worth like $8 million right now. Yeah. I have a call with them set up. Join it. So there's one of those stories where, if you're those guys, you're like, I don't know what we're supposed to do. Now they don't have any money right now, and so that's tough, right? Because they don't have a ton of dough, so that sells off that way. But I think that that's great, and it ran, and everyone's like, oh, it ran to 30. It's like it was worth 12.
Do you think the disconnect in terms of share price to story or asset is unique to our space, just because it's so small? And
public,
if you believe in the efficient market hypothesis, like the price should be reflected almost immediately. So if you put out a good hole like Stellar Africa, it should be priced in.
But it's not, because it's a junior market, and price discovery and deal discovery here. How many people you talk to around the world who are like, I'd love to own junior mining in Canada, but there's 3,000 companies. I don't even know where to start, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons that Earth Labs has this media arm was that, where like people should know what's going on, right? Like it's very hard. So I think that it's not efficient whatsoever, the venture. And I spent, a long time in venture technology. I've spent a lot of time down in Silicon Valley. I slept on floors trying to raise money with people. And I think that the difference in this market and there is that you have long-term capital there, such that you can build out. So you put out a discovery, then a year later, you can kind of spend your time building the business. Because mining is like any other business, right? So it's like, prove your customers. Your customers are the rock, right? That's how you make your money. Then you got to scale your rock, just like you scale your business. And then once you have this like much more certain cash flow model, that's when you can go public and push. But we have this public market where the ups and downs of it are so volatile that makes it very hard, right? So really, you'd love to be a private company and be able to do this. And one of our favorite stories is Kulu, who's private and taking their time, and it's fantastic, right? And the guys at Aquitaine who are hitting and things like. So you don't have to deal with the market volatility, but at the same time, the access to capital in our public markets is great. So it's hard, but definitely 100%. This is the most inefficient market I've ever seen in the whole world. Yeah, which is why I love it.
Yeah, well, inefficient markets give you time to benefit from, it gives you time to get positioned into a story, and I guess you it's cliche, but let the drilling talk for you. But I guess to avoid these major swings, you also want like a decent retail base in there, because if you just fire sniper shots and have a handful of people in there, you're going to see way more exaggerated swings in your share price. But I guess what you said, if you're in it for the long term, the story will speak for itself. And
big systems, good people, access to capital. We get so freaked out about like, oh, they're going to raise. It's like, yeah, but you're not probably going to be into that raise. So like we've been burned on it. We're like, oh, we'll plan a financing, and we miss it because they're like, yeah, our core group is playing. Stock triples, and that's the end of that, right? So you're like, oh man, I should have just bought it when I liked it.
Yeah. Okay, well, speaking of good people and access to capital, I want to introduce our guest for today. Jim Paterson is the co-founder and principal of Discovery Group and has over 20 years of experience doing just about everything in mining. He was a long and standing active director of Kaminak, which was acquired by Goldcorp, and a founding director of Northern Empire Resources, which was acquired by Coeur. He founded Corsa Capital in 2007, and a 2010 transaction created an industry-leading met coal producer with 250 million market cap. In addition, he's the chairman and CEO of ValOre Metals. He's a director of K2 Gold and acts as a strategic advisor to Kodiak Copper and Prospector Metals. And he's also involved with Aquitaine, so we'll stick to our make or break drill hole topic with Jim Paterson.
Jim, what's happening, buddy?
Gentlemen, how are you?
Busy, exciting times right now, aren't they?
Isn't it? Very exciting.
How many discoveries you got in your hand right now?
Yeah. You Matt put out a discovery last week, and then you had to come over the top and
I can
Three
never,
things you put out in the last week.
I can never let Matt win. I must destroy him at all costs.
Man, let's talk about that. What? That was crazy. That whole so good. Rob, man, that guy just kills it all the time. Just
Yeah.
no.
Actually, no, of course, he's awesome. And I've worked with Rob for almost 20 years now, to the initial days of Discovery Group. And I was thinking, I watched one of your interviews last week, and it was with Ira. And you did this digging it deal where, you know, you're pitching a project. And I thought, like, my background in this business is all about people. So, like, pitching the success of someone like Ira, and she's at the helm of a company with a 6.8 million market cap, it's insane. It's insanely undervalued. And the same goes for someone like Rob Carpenter, who has had tremendous success. And even after success, he continues to toil relentlessly to do it again. And he did that with Prospector, with, you know, the Prospector team, and John Robbins is an advisor, Jody Gibson's VPX. So, like, you know, he's got a great team around him, but I bet on Rob any day.
Well, all you guys, man, what is it that drives you guys? You guys have had some victories, you know, lots of wins over the last 20 years. I mean, you know, most recently, I guess it was Great Bear. You know, you guys are going into France and changing the world over there. And what is the drive that kind of pushes you guys forward on these sort of things? It's just like, what is it? What is it?
Tremendous insecurity. No, I think we're all pretty confident. You know what? I just think that's how we're made. I think if somebody said, "What do you do?" and I said, "Well, I'm just like a student or reading, or, you know, like I'm spending my time relaxing," I would be embarrassed. I sort of think of myself as what I'm trying to achieve. So in that way, we're always trying, and certainly we don't always win. But I think it's I think the saying is a strong man who is one who stands up when he can't. So, like, you know, I think with in particular with Rob, like the big fanfare around Kaminak happened for him anyways more than 10 years ago, and, you know, he's just stayed at it hard. And obviously it's not easy to make a new discovery, but he somehow managed to do it.
Do you think that when the market turns, it seems interesting, I feel like there's more discoveries in the last few months than I saw in like 10 years. Do you think that it's just because I wasn't paying attention in a bad market, or because there's more capital and more support, and it just seems like more is happening right now than it has for a long time? And do they feed each other, or is it do you know what I mean? Like, it just, or was I just not paying attention?
I think that a lot of the stuff you said is totally true. One thing though, sometimes we seek validation for our ideas, and, you know, in a bad market, if a good drill hole comes out and the market doesn't respond, or maybe someone has to sell their stock and it actually goes down, God forbid, after a great result, then the market says, well, I guess that wasn't that good. But in this kind of market, I mean, in particular with Prospector last week, I was shocked at the volume.
I traded like 36 million shares one day.
Well, it traded 28 on the day of the discovery, and, you know, it just kept going higher and higher and higher. And like then when it looked like it was coming down again, some institution would come in and bid it up again, and it was, you know, it was massive. A cool fact is, it traded the same amount of the dollar value in stock on Wednesday as the entire valuation of the company the previous day. That's pretty amazing. So it was worth $30 million on Tuesday, and it traded $30 million worth of stock on Wednesday.
That is cool.
Based on the discovery. So I think, but to answer your question, Matt, I think that obviously with more capital and also in bad markets, people don't, like shareholders don't want the companies to take a whole bunch of risks. But right now the risk is on, so they're drilling targets they may not have had the guts to drill 2 or 3 years ago. They didn't have the.
That's a good point.
And now they're like, let's just test it, because if we win, great, and if we don't, the price will still go up. So there's less at stake maybe, and of course there's the upside's pretty obvious right now, where your discovery and that's 2 discoveries in a week's time in Canada. That's pretty amazing.
3 days.
3 days. Sorry, 3 days. I guess it was
wild.
Monday. It was Monday.
So fun, man.
Yeah.
It's so fun. It's and you see these things go up and down. It's a really good point, actually. I hadn't thought about that. And it was the same with us, where the history of this project is 2 brownfields for us, like 2 mines, and then a ton of twin holes, like so many twins of like these like 6-month exploration programs, and people come in, they amass some great packages, but then they drill the same hole over and over again, hoping to get things going. Right? We drilled something completely different, and I know that there was a history up in Prospector of drilling up there, and this is obviously not in that history, and so you've got the great geology up there. And someone, obviously, you guys and Rob just really know this space up there. But then, yeah, that's a really good point. You drill something different, so a little bit more risk allows for a little bit more reward, and not the end of the world if you miss.
Yeah, I think what people that are investors that aren't sort of inside the tent at the individual companies don't know, that you're looking at sometimes what looks like a blob on a map, and you have to determine whether you want to spend a couple $100,000 testing it. And if market conditions are tight and the treasury is empty, you're not going to test the blob necessarily. But in the case, obviously there's more work that goes into it than just a blob. But it is, if it hasn't been drilled, there's high risk in terms of just having a geophysical anomaly in a static image or even in a model to test with real dollars.
Just drill the purple blob, right, Jim?
Well, yeah. I mean, depending on what your target is, but you're right.
Yeah.
Usually it's my CFO always laughs at me. He's like, how many big red blobs do we have this time? Because I have 5 projects before this one where the red blobs were not mineralized.
Yeah. Well, but what you just said, let's say, is exactly what I was talking about, because for the last 5 or 10 years, cooler heads would prevail and the targets wouldn't get tested.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was obviously Prospector Metals, but there's a private company that you're involved with in France, of all places, and quietly you guys put out another fantastic hole. And what was the rationale of putting out, I guess, a press release on a private company? Is that we're talking about Aquitaine?
Yeah.
You're 16 grams over 20 meters,
right,
which is another burner.
Yeah, that's a very exciting project. I think that's twofold. I think we have some pretty big shareholders in that company, and we want to keep them informed. And that a news release or press release is a way to keep everybody equally as informed and look to the future, like make sure our disclosure is proper as we move forward to whatever transaction might be in the best interest of the shareholders. And with respect to sorry, Cejay, tell me again. In addition to the news release, what were you asking?
I think you answered
it.
I don't think a lot of people know about this company or the project that you have in it, just because it is private. But this is another company that you founded, housed within the Discovery Group of assets. Can you give a quick rundown on Aquitaine for our listeners?
Yeah, for sure. This is a company that we formed in 2020, and it was through, there was a French PhD geologist named the wonderful Thomas, who was looking to take advantage of what he thought was a reinvigoration of the mining space in France. And he happened to be from the area, and he happened to know there was tremendous gold potential there. So through LinkedIn, he identified some people that brought the idea to Earl McMaster and Dave Sadowski at Canaccord, and then they brought it to John and I. And the point was that we would go and and fund the company privately until we had received mineral tenure or permits from the government of France. It took us quite a while to get what we needed, and then when we had what we needed, we, in terms of the permits, and we got a drill permit. At that point, we had a certain somebody that we had in our sights to come on board as CEO. His name's Chris Taylor. And so he was quite excited when we had the mineral tenure that we felt we were secure in our land position. We had the drill permits. Chris joined as CEO, and then he's been able to raise a whole bunch of capital and then oversee the drill program. So we've got a land position and 2 drill rigs running right now. It's not exactly fast over there in France to get to drill and get results, but with two drill rigs we're delivering. So just part of the overall program was released earlier this week.
So for those who don't know, Chris Taylor ran Great Bear, which sold for $1.8 billion to Kinross. And I will say, in the most impressive, most almost hilarious pitch I've ever seen, is we are sitting, Jim, in your office, and Chris has this slide of Great Bear. And then so for Aquitaine, it's like one of my favorite gold projects I've ever seen. And it's this slide of Great Bear. He's like, here's Great Bear. And then it's the trend of Aquitaine. And he's like, here's all the known mineralization in Aquitaine, because it's this older project and they're going to redo it. And then he's like, you will fit 5 Great Bears in this trend. And oh yeah, we also have 300 or 200 or whatever, how many hundred more kilometers in this. And I think that was the selling point for everyone. We're like, okay. And it's just an unbelievable project.
Yeah.
It's great.
One the thing that totally excites me about that project is that just recognizing the sample set that brought us to acquire the project, which is over 2,500 years ago, the Gauls dug holes in the ground to mine gold. And on this project area alone, I think there's close to 1,000 holes by people that dug them over 2,000 years ago to get gold of them. And some of them are, bigger than bus stations or huge. And so it does, there's something that has to be pretty serious to motivate a man to dig a hole that big. And in this case, it was super high grade gold. So these, 1,000, 1,200 holes that are in the ground, they all follow structure on our property. So it's like one huge rock sample that's the size of a bus station to show you that there's gold there and it follows structure. So the
best use of LiDAR I've ever seen.
Yes, and it was all and it's identifiable by LiDAR. You're right, Matt. So that's very exciting. So I think maybe you guys should have Chris on the show to have him pitch the deal.
Rip through it even more. Yeah, it's an amazing project. That was a great hit. I think that there's so much more there to come.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Very happy to see that. Yeah, it's awesome.
It's all.
What else is going on? And you run a company down in Brazil right now. Maybe just quickly touch on that. I mean, I think just keep we own that too. What else do you want us to buy? We'll just keep going.
Yeah.
Just make it rain on names that you have. Maybe touch quickly just on ValOre. What are you guys doing these days?
Well, I'm super excited because we have recently appointed a new CEO. So the caliber of management has gone up about 100 times because I was previously CEO. And his name is Nick Smart. He started last week. I'm excited to just interact with him because he's really experienced on an area of the business that we're not. So he came out of Anglo. He worked in platinum mines in South Africa. He built a zinc project in Namibia. He went to Brazil for 6 years to build a nickel mine and some arc furnaces there. Then he moved to Northern Canada to work at a diamond project for De Beers, an operating mine. He was so good they seconded him to go to London and work for the CEO of De Beers. Then he identified an opportunity, a threat to De Beers, which was that artificial diamonds might cannibalize the natural diamond market. So that was pitched to the board, and they thought his idea was a good one. He went off and built a facility in Portland, Oregon, and actually was responsible for the profit, P&L and sales and everything. And so this guy is now CEO.
This guy decided to come in ValOre.
Yeah, so he's
that's amazing.
That is shocking. So I have to pinch myself, but he's somebody that I'm super excited to support in my role as chairman of the company. We'll just make sure he has the resources he needs to get after it on our Pedra Branca PGM project, which is platinum and palladium, over 2 million ounces in northeastern Brazil. And then we're going down there actually next week because there's been a number of gold assets that we've been looking at as well. So what we're looking to do is build this integrated precious metals company in Brazil, sort of marrying Discovery Group's ability to raise capital for exploration and taking projects to the feasibility stage. And Nick, is someone who's done so much, big cap projects, up $500 million, $2 billion projects from concept right into production. So, having him there is just an amazing counterweight, let's say, to our expertise. And
oh man, so that is exciting. I'm not sure I understood the breadth of, I got your email on it. I'm not sure I appreciated the breadth of his experience and how he's jumping into this platform. That's so exciting.
Yeah. So, sorry, CJ.
I was just going to ask you more of a macro question about platinum. How come, platinum historically has always been a precious metal that was, more expensive on an ounce basis than gold, and then obviously there's a comparison of gold to silver, and they always interacted at a certain ratio, but then all of a sudden there was a disconnect between them. Why is that? Was there a shift in something systemically, or why is there such a disconnect between the two precious metals now?
Well, I don't know for sure, but my opinion is that the element of being precious is obviously, the same word might be valuable, let's say, or scarce. And with respect to platinum, when it is something that's trading higher than gold, if you were looking to buy the metal for its precious nature or its store of value, you'd appreciate the fact that it was worth more than gold. In the case of platinum and palladium, both of them got their asses kicked when the world decided that we would no longer need internal combustion engines and we would all be driving electric cars before you know it. And the biggest use of both of those metals is in catalytic converters, so autocatalysts. So if the perception is, from an industrial perspective, these will no longer be used, they will be phased out for electric vehicles, the value decreased dramatically, and then you get this sort of inflection point where platinum was worth more than gold, it's trading a lot less than gold, it loses its value, it isn't something that's valued more than gold. I don't know if I explained that properly, but if something is demonstrating value, people will buy it based on its value relative to gold. In this case, it traded under gold, and then I think people just thought it's not going to have any industrial use, and so the price will go down. And I think what's happened is that didn't occur. Electric vehicles didn't take over, and in fact, hybrids will probably be the next step between here and any kind of electrical revolution that changes the automobile market.
I think that narrative was placed on the metal just like how it was on silver when metal prices were very depressed and people had to form some sort of a new narrative where silver could be used on an industrial basis to, I guess, weather the storm. But now people are looking at it as what it should be, a precious metal. And I think that platinum is still very, very undervalued just because it is rare. It's rarer than gold. And in today's, I guess, environment, people are gravitating towards these inflation hedges or even risk hedges or volatility hedges. So I think it's an undervalued metal, and I think companies like ValOre are definitely going to get it more eyeballs moving forward.
Yeah, we've already seen it.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think some of the gold dollars might cascade into platinum. I think it would take them a lot to cascade into palladium. That's more of a niche market. But platinum, I think, would be no stretch at all for many investors that want to, buy platinum coins or jewelry as a store of value, or just bars. I think palladium might be a bridge too far for some of them, but not all of them.
We don't have palladium bars in your safe?
I in fact do, but I'm a kind of special guy.
That's just who you are.
Yeah.
That's why you're still pushing on this. I got it.
Pushing it uphill, man.
Okay, Jim.
Matt.
Dig this deal. This is our favorite part of this segment. So far, we've learned about a lot of new deals that we really like, too. And I've bought lots of things now based on this. And the whole premise here, just to wrap it up, in a very short period of time, is that this is an elevator pitch. 30 seconds to 1 minute, even though someone I know goes over the 1 minute a lot.
Is that person?
I'm not
on
going to
the
go
call?
over a minute this time.
Person might be on the call
Okay.
and may talk for 3 minutes or 4. And in an effort to keep this on a short elevator ride of 30 seconds to 1 minute, the only rule is you have to say the market cap of the company, but don't say the name. So it's an anonymous pitch, so there's no bias, but 2 rules, under a minute, and say anything you want, but you have to say the market cap so that everyone has relative value. The deal comes out, we dig it or ditch it, or more often than not, we dig into it, and it's a group consensus on how we go. So that is the way to go. Cejay, you want to start, as you've seemed very researched on this one, and as you start, and now I've put pressure on you to be short. We can see how that goes.
This is going to be short, and it's going to be unique, but that's all I'm giving away right now. Some people say my last week's pitch on Earth Labs was a cop-out, but I think it was warranted because of how undervalued we are. And this is another undervalued story. Even though I am worth $50 billion and I am up 50% this year, I've already raised $2.7 billion in half of this year, which is almost as much as I raised last year. I follow the markets. I am cyclical, and even though I'm worth 50 billion, I'm a fraction of what I was at my peak historically. I follow the commodity markets, and I give exposure to arguably, I would say, the majority of the junior exploration stocks in the world.
I dig it, the TSXV.
I am the TSX Venture, and while we are only up 50%,
I dig it. We got a long way to go.
we have so much.
In.
We have so much to go, and I don't think people realize the amount of torque and asymmetric upside the venture exchange can give you. And obviously, we're looking at it as an aggregate, but the ability to pick stocks managed by, experienced and proprietors with a track record like the Discovery Group that have a nose of picking out, high quality tier 1 projects. This is why we're in the space, to have this kind of upside. But that being said, are we going to see a rising tides raises all ships scenario, or are we going to have to get in there, get dirty, and pick out the best companies? That's, I guess, to be seen. But that was my pitch. Do you like it, Jim?
I like it. May I ask you a question, since I'm speaking to the TSX exchange in person here? Based upon the comparison between valuations today and at its peak, did you say that number?
I didn't say the actual valuation because I didn't want to pay for that information, but I was looking at it as an indexed exercise. Yeah. So I was able to go back all the way back to the Vancouver exchange through the consolidations of different exchanges and index them all the way from the beginning. And so it is very, very cyclical. And even though we saw an uptick this year, we're nowhere near the peak. I think on an index basis, we're around 766. The peak was, well over 3,000. So
wow,
there's a lot more runway here, and hopefully that means we're going to see more than a year or two of a bull market.
Yeah, I mean, you think about their revenue stream, new listings, financings.
Well, no, I'm looking at it as an index, not the TSX.
Oh, not the owner, not the actual.
No, not the owner
exchange.
of it. They're not worth.
They're a public
billion.
exchange. Okay, I got you.
They're a public company.
I ditched the pitch, but I dig the TSXV going up more.
Yeah,
I was trying to be unique.
Well, you really were.
It didn't really work.
No, you were. Yeah.
Yeah, the TSX Venture in itself is.
All right, moving on. Jim, you want?
Yeah, I don't know if
Jim,
I would.
You want to go? You want me to go?
Yeah, I'll go.
I tried, guys.
I'll go.
All right.
Okay, so I am a company with a 30 million Canadian market cap that has announced a transaction with a private company that will, based on the ratio, will have a 50 million market cap Canadian. This particular company has projects in Ethiopia, and the transaction allows for a tremendously successful team to acquire a large portfolio of projects in Saudi Arabia. Both the west and the east side of the Red Sea are the Arabian-Nubian Shield, and the Saudi side of it is very underexplored. This particular team behind the publicly traded company that will acquire the private company with assets in Saudi Arabia has been behind large VMS discoveries like Bisha on the eastern side, on the western side of the Red Sea previously. They have members of their team were behind little success stories like Sandstorm, and they are merging with an on-the-ground expert team to get after the projects in Saudi Arabia, which is I think one of the best areas in the world to explore and develop and put into production mineral projects.
Super digging in. Who are these guys? Super curious. Is it the guys that were in Egypt as the private company? Was that the what's the company? So fascinating.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia, fascinating.
So
Hard, fascinating.
The name of the publicly traded company is Sunpeak, P-E-A-K, and that would be run by Greg Davis. David Arm is the chairman of that company. So, Dave Arm is behind the Sandstorm, and Greg Davis worked way back in the day, and they were behind the discovery of Bisha. And now that a lot of those team members have been trying hard to get into Saudi for many, many years. But I and a bunch of guys went into Saudi Arabia, and we have a particular contact, which has got great contacts in the mining industry, and we were able to work with this team on the ground to acquire a bunch of properties, and we'll be rolling it. It's been announced, and we're rolling it into Sunpeak.
That's
Very
awesome.
cool. That's awesome.
I am tentatively digging it. I like Saudi Arabia. It's essentially the last frontier, and it's, what you said, part of...
It's not the last frontier. The amount of times we've heard last frontier.
It's the last
Come on, it's not the last
frontier.
frontier. Until you get to the Arctic, it's not the last frontier, all right? Let's be serious. It's a frontier that has not been touched yet.
Last frontier.
I've worked in the last frontier. It's way different than working in Saudi Arabia. There's roads, there's ministry.
I think it is
the amount of oil there, it can't be the last frontier.
Well, that's the thing. They've always concentrated on oil, and mining has always taken a back seat to it, even though, it's part of a very prolific, the Nubian Shield. I think it's a geologist's wet dream to get in there, because it's always been run by Maden and...
Yeah, Middle East in general. I was with the guy who used to run Newmont East Asia. We were trying to find a gold mine in Taiwan, of all places, back in 2019.
Wow.
And it was like Hishikawa Part 2. And anyway, he was convinced Yemen. He was like, we're going to Yemen. And I was like, all right. But Saudi seems to be like a wonderful place to operate right now. A lot of people seem to be very excited about it. So only question I have on how is it dealing with, if you're there, how is it dealing with the country? I know that in Africa it can be challenging sometimes when no mining and there's oil, because oil country takes interest. The country, there's so much revenue so quickly. Does it challenge the way that an explorer can get in and operate when the government is so used to oil as its primary driver versus mining, which is such a different business?
I think so the answer is no, not really. The only difference would be the perception of like what a junior company is. In their mind, a junior company might be a small, $1 billion a year turnover company, and our idea of a junior is, 2 million market cap with zero in the bank. So there's a totally different perception there, and I think it's an educational process to see, just to let them know how long it takes us to raise capital to get stuff done. Of course, this market is really screaming, so capital moves very quickly.
Right.
But I think that just the time frame from initial concept to production might be longer than they would think based upon knowing what they know about the oil and gas business. However, I would say that Mahadan, for example, we were in a meeting there a couple of years ago, and they told us over a 3-year period, they were going to drill 2 million meters. I don't know if you have any concept of how many meters that is.
That's a lot of rigs.
That's a lot of rigs. That's a lot. That's a pretty big entity to be drilling that kind of meterage, and that's infill drilling, resource expansion, and also exploratory. But it's like a factory that. So I mean, I think what they're just trying to. One of the differences is in some places, like including in northern Canada, you have a spectacular discovery, you're moving forward, you want to get the capital. The government is a gatekeeper, and in Saudi Arabia, if you make a discovery and you're moving it towards feasibility, the government wants to give you money, and they want to pick you up and help you get into production, because what they're trying to do is create that downstream part of the business.
Sunpeak, I'm digging. Am I going to buy it? I'm in. I'm already buying it. Right. I'm buying it in my head already. That's awesome. You guys there, that's great. All right, well, I'm going to pitch something a little bit different here. Well, not so different, but it's just as unestablished, I guess. All right, so I have $110 million market cap, almost 400 million in shares, but I have 25 million in cash. There's a lot of dilutive securities at my 30 cents share price here in about 40, but fully diluted, I have about 55 million in cash and a cap of 150. I really don't have any drill holes on my property, but I have a 4-kilometer long soil anomaly and about 15 more kilometers that extend from the largest purchase of a non-resource company in history, which was $4.5 billion. I have a very large property, lots of historic drilling that hits a little bit of copper, but deep-rooted MT shows that I have a ton of potential, again attaching to a $4.5 billion company that's been purchased, which also attaches to a $5.5 billion copper company, which also attaches to a $16 billion copper company, all in the Vicuña district. I'm going to start drilling soon. The only negative is it's at 4,500 meter elevation in the top of the mountains, and Philo would have expected that drill cost might reach up to $2,000 a meter. So I don't have the most efficient use, but my property is very exciting. Drilling soon, $110 million cap, 25 million in cash, 150 million fully diluted. Fantastic prospect. Dig or ditch.
Just by your tone of voice alone, I'm going to dig it. That was beautiful.
Didn't we talk
Thanks,
about
Is that
150
Is that Magotes?
That's
100
Magotes. Yeah, I was trying to
150 million? Well, now that you said the name, I think I have to dig it.
Go long, CJ.
Yeah, but off
Long
the bat,
and strong.
we were just talking about a lot, like, you know, how it's very, very hard to pull out a hole to meet certain expectations. Now that, like, I know it a little bit more, but first blush, right? It's very, very hard to meet that kind of expectation, no?
For sure. I think I forgot to say one thing in the pitch, which is they basically have to be bought. For Philo to be put into production, you can't have their property. It literally attaches to the edge of the pit. Like, you actually can't have them there. So your downside protection is pretty high. That is one thing I will say. That being said, I don't know when Philo is that project is going to get built 50 years from now, but maybe sooner, maybe later. But I think that I like the downside protection in there. I went through their deck. One of the best PowerPoints and visuals for a junior I've ever seen. It's so wonderful to go to look at that website. It's terrific. I recommend it to anyone listening. It gets you pumped up. Got me pumped up. And this new asset that they acquired, which wasn't in there when we helped get it started. It's just this soil anomaly. It's like over 1,000 ppm copper for like 4 kilometers attached to Philo. It's pretty cool.
Wow.
Well,
Exciting.
I dig it. I'm not going to tell you why. Yeah. Well, I think the expectation of what kind of hole you pull out in a district like that compared to its peers, like
80 meters to 20%.
Is what? That's the expectation? Or?
That's NG. Well, that was NGX, right? Lunawasi. Okay. When I know the story, obviously, I work very closely with Neil O'Brien, and so he goes through NGX a lot with me, and the story of that coming together and the importance of structures, and that is what, they drilled 1,000 meters of 1% copper just to show that they could, and that's not even going to be in the mine plan. Like, that district is pretty wild for that breadth of mineralization, right? When Philo's pulling out 2,000 meters of 1.5% equivalent, it's wild. So anyway, Magotes Metals, that was pretty fun. Jim, that was awesome, man.
Sun Peak,
ValOre, Sun Peak,
days, and buy the TSX Venture. Let's go. Yeah.
No, guys, follow the people. Like you guys,
follow the people.
You guys
That's
had
the lesson of this pod.
Ira Thomas, one of the best human beings in our business, and she has had success after success. She's still totally humble. She works her ass off. She has this amazing team around her. And you got North Arrow at 6.8 million market cap. Give me a break.
There's other buy. That's like circling back. North Arrow, West Haven. It's like 1 million ounces at 6 grams for 30 million. Yeah, she's got such good things.
Yeah. So follow the people.
Follow the people. Jim, we're following you, buddy. Thanks a lot for joining us. That was a really great time.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you being here.
Appreciate your time. Thank you, Jim.
It was great to be here.
Okay, so that was fun.
One of the good ones right there. Jim's seen a lot, done a lot.
Yeah. Never-ending arsenal of high-grade drill hole, Jim.
It's a lot of discoveries.
Yeah, makes it look easy, but I think it's easy to forget that. But
you have to avail yourself the discovery. That's the great phrase I've learned recently. You have to, which means you got to take shots. You got to go into big places, big ideas, and I think that follow the people and and I think follow big ideas. I think that's really, if there's anything I've learned the last few years, like you need big concepts, big mineral systems, big ideas, big approaches, big people. Like, when you get those things, you usually get some big successes. And, that's the, I know Denny pitches that all the time, right? How much land can you possibly own in Newfoundland? 100 kilometers.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why Jim says people are important. Obviously, you want to follow successful people, but these guys all have the capacity to raise a lot of money to put into the ground. And I think people, you can't just raise, $1 million or $2 million at a time. You need to raise a lot of money.
And people who understand that there's a timeline. So like it's okay. The stock goes up and down, you miss, it's fine. Like when you have people that are around you that understand like things take time, it's such a benefit to the company, right? Because you're like, okay, you missed. It's okay. Don't worry. The geology's still really good. You'll hit it. It's not like the end of the world when you miss one hole. And yeah, with these groups, it's never going to zero, right? So the one thing we talked about venture capital earlier, like is it good or bad? But the one thing about the public markets in Canada is that you never have a zero. So in venture capital and private companies, it's zero when it doesn't work. Here, if you follow the people, it's not going to be zero. You find new ideas, you pivot, you do things that work, right? So average down with good people.
Prospector is another company that pivoted their main project.
Yeah, 3 times, I think, right? Yeah, like they were in Ontario and then they moved out there. And yeah. Well, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, before I let you go, you know what? The last 2 dig this deal, I feel were kind of bad on my part, but I wanted to bring a different flavor. Definitely didn't work. Like in my head, it sounded cool, but what a flop. I'm going to come to the table next week with a banger.
You better come with some fire.
Yeah, and it's going to be something that no one knows.
To the doc. That's great.
All right. Okay, thanks, Matt.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Cejay.